What's up, YouTube? My name is Matt Modi. I am a content producer and betting analyst for OddsJam.com. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to bet on the Super Bowl. It's obviously the biggest sporting event of the year. One game to rule them all for each NFL season, the Super Bowl. This year, I am lucky enough to have the team that I root for participate in the Eagles, as you can see from the flag up there. And then they are going against the Kansas City Chiefs. Very, very scary matchup. But in general, I'm not going to give my predictions, my bets. I'm just going to teach you how to bet on the Super Bowl and then different Super Bowl betting strategies, as well as all the different props that you can bet on as well, and all about how to find that stuff. So right off the bat, when it comes to Super Bowl betting, number one, there are going to be three main lines that you can bet on: the point spread, the money line, and the total. Now, I'm going to start with the money line because that is the easiest it's the easiest bet to conceptualize in sports. When you're betting on the money line, you're literally just betting on who is going to win the game. So the Chiefs money line, the Eagles money line, if you bet on either of these teams' money line, you're literally just betting on them to win straight up. Doesn't matter if they win by 100, doesn't matter if they win by overtime, or in overtime, I should say, just that they're winning straight up. As you can see on the screenshot here, wrong side, I have the odds pulled up from the moneyline odds, I should say, for this game. And as we can see, the Chiefs are at plus 100, the Eagles are at minus 118. So whenever you see a plus and a minus in sports betting, the minus dictates the favorite, the plus dictates the underdog. So in this case, the Eagles are the slight favorite here, as I said, at minus 118 odds, with the Chiefs being the underdog at plus 100. Now, what those numbers mean: the number next to the minus, that means how much money you would have to risk in order to profit $100. So if I wanted to profit $100 on the Eagles, I would have to risk $118. So whenever you see the plus, because it's the opposite, it's the underdog, that is how much money you would win if you risked $100. So for the Chiefs, if I wanted to win $100, or if I wanted to risk $100 on the Chiefs, I would profit $100. Plus 100 is pretty easy. It just means whatever you put in is what you profit. But in general, the bigger the number next to the minus sign, that means the bigger the favorite. So if the Eagles went up to minus 130, minus 140, minus 150, they would be becoming bigger and bigger favorites, more and more likely to win, which means that they become more expensive, right? If a sportsbook thinks that the Eagles are more likely to win, they're going to make them more expensive to buy. The more likely, the more expensive. The opposite is true for the underdog. The bigger the underdog, the bigger that number is next to the plus. So if the Chiefs ended up going to plus 120, plus 130, they would become, the sportsbook would deem them less and less likely to win. So you'd be getting more and more profit on them to win. So it's kind of the opposite of the minus. But that is a money line bet. You're just betting on who's going to win straight up. It's the easiest bet to conceptualize in sports. Next up, we have the spread. And the spread dictates how many points a team is favored by. So in this case, as you can see on the screenshot here, the Eagles are 1.5 point favorites. So the minus again dictates the favorite. So you see the minus next to the Eagles. That means they are the favorite. The number, the point total next to the Eagles, that is how many points they are favored by. So the way a point spread works is the Eagles being minus 1.5 point favorites means they'd have to win by 2 or more points in order for you to win your spread bet on the Eagles. So the number next to the minus 1.5, that is how many points the team needs to win by in order for you to win your spread bet. So if the Eagles win by 2 or more, you would have won your spread bet. If the Eagles either win by 1 or lose the game straight up, then you would lose your spread bet on the Eagles. Again, it's similar but opposite for the underdog. The Chiefs, they could either win straight up or they could lose by exactly 1 point, and you would win your spread bet on the Chiefs plus 1.5. So right off the bat, in terms of different betting strategies when it comes to money line versus point spread, the money line is a really easy way for you to back the favorite, but you're not confident in them covering whatever the spread is. So if I really liked the Eagles and thought they were going to win, but I didn't think they were going to win by 2 or more, I thought it was going to be literally a 1 point game, I could just bet on the Eagles money line. Now, obviously, I am accepting a little bit more juice, which just means the odds are a little bit less favorable for me, but I'm getting a safer bet. Now, if I was confident the Eagles were going to win and I was confident the Eagles were going to win by 2 or more points, then I would just place a bet on the spread because I don't have to pay as much for it. It's minus 110 odds versus minus 118. The lower the numbers go in the odds, the less you have to risk is just kind of how that works. So minus 110 means you risk $110 to profit 100. Again, it's the same but opposite for the underdog. If I think they're going to win straight up, then you should take an underdog's money line because the payout is higher. Instead of getting the Chiefs at plus 1.5 at minus 110 odds, if I think the Chiefs can win straight up, I should just bet on their money line and get them at plus 100. But then if you like the underdog to keep it close, but you're not quite confident that they're going to cover the spread, or you're not quite confident that they're going to win straight up, then you should just place a bet on the spread. Makes your bet a lot more, depending on what the number is, more likely to hit, but not as good odds. So it's all about a risk-reward payout in terms of whether you want to bet on a spread or a money line. So those are 2 main markets. There's a third main market. This one doesn't have anything to do with the actual winner or loser of the game. Instead, you are betting on the total. Now, the total means that you're betting on the number of points to be scored in the game and whether it's going to go over or under that number. In this case, the total is at 49.5, which means that if you bet on the over, 50 or more points need to be scored. If you bet on the under, 49 or fewer points need to be scored. It doesn't matter how those points are scored. It doesn't matter where they come from, what team scores them, if they come in overtime. All that matters is that the points are scored. Eagles could win 50-0. And the over would hit. The total could hit in overtime, right? It could go over 50 points, but only in overtime. That would still count as the over hitting. So in terms of strategy with the total, a lot of times people like to bet on the total when they don't have a play on who is going to win straight up, but they think that either a lot of points are going to be scored or not a lot of points are going to be scored. Now, at the end of this video, I will talk about total strategies. I'll talk about moneyline point spread strategies, but that's kind of the basics when it comes to the 3 main lines. Now, the fun part about the Super Bowl is that there are a ton of different options to bet on. These are called proposition bets. Now, for the Super Bowl, there are 3 types of prop bets, which is different. Most games don't have the third one. There are just 2. But for the Super Bowl, there are player props, there are game props, and and this is the new one, unique to the Super Bowl, there are novelty props. Now, I'll talk about novelty props last because it has the widest range of options and is also, it's novelty. It's the most ridiculous. I'll start with player props. Basically, all you need to know about a player prop, if there is a counting stat for it, you can bet on it. The screenshot here shows you the 3 main ones: passing, receiving, rushing. There are also defensive props. There are also kicker props. But as long as there is a counting stat, it can be bet on. But I figured the easiest way to talk to you about player props would be to actually show you how to navigate to player props on the different sports books, which I'm going to do now. So I showed you the screenshot earlier from FanDuel. Passing props is everything you can imagine. It's passing yards, passing touchdowns, who will have the most passing yards, exact passing touchdowns, and then, of course, an interception. You can also bet on passing plus rushing as well. Then we have receiving props. We have receiving yards, we have receptions, and then you can bet on alternate totals as well. All you need to know about alternate totals is that, so for Dallas Goedert, FanDuel is pricing, let me zoom in a little bit here, pricing his over-under receiving yards at 46.5. Betting on an alternate receiving yards lets you bet more or less than that number for better or worse odds. So if I think Dallas Goedert is going to have a really good game, not only do I think he's going to go over, but I think he's going to have over 60 receiving yards, I could lock that in right here at much better odds. Rushing is exactly what it sounds like. It's rushing yards, rushing plus receiving. You can also bet as soon as the game gets closer. There are different types of rushing, receiving, and passing props, like longest reception, rushing attempts, all that stuff. Defensive props is sacks, tackles, 2+ sacks, recorded interception, stuff like that. Kicker props, total kicking points. That stuff is pretty simple. But regardless, all you need to know about player props is if there is a counting stat for it, in the actual game itself. If the NFL tracks this as a counting stat, then there are going to be it's going to be able to be bet as a player prop. So that's player props. Game props are kind of similar to the total, in which you're not necessarily betting on the direct winner or loser of the game. They're just different types of props that you can bet on. A couple examples, a very, very common game prop would be team total. So you know what? I'm not confident that the total itself is going to go over or under, but I am very confident in the Eagles or the Chiefs specifically scoring more or less points than what the total dictates. Another game prop could be first half total points. So you know what? I think that a lot of points are actually going to be scored in the first half. And then I think defenses are going to catch up, or the opposite. You can bet on the first half total. You can bet on the first half spread. For example, the Eagles are one of the fastest starting teams in the NFL. They hit their first half spread at the highest rate of any team in the NFL. So if you really like the Eagles to start off fast, not quite be able to continue that as the game goes on, you can bet on their first half spread. But there are, in terms of game props, there are a ton of different options when it comes to game props, a lot more than player props. So if I share my screen here again, we see first half, we see second half, we see first quarter, scoring. So you can bet on the exact score. You can bet on the team's exact score, the first half, the first quarter, team to score first, last, all that good stuff. And then totals are like the alternate total points, but then you can also bet on Eagles total points. You can bet on Chiefs total points. You can also bet on total touchdown score. So there are a ton of different options when it comes to game props. All you really need to know is that it's any type of prop bet, any type of bet that's not regarding a specific player, and that's also not one of the three main lines. That is a prop bet. Now, novelty props is the next one. That is the absolute most confusing thing when it comes to betting on the Super Bowl. It's also the most fun because you normally don't get these types of props. So a novelty prop is pretty much anything that I didn't already mention. It's kind of nebulous on purpose because different sportsbooks have different types of novelty props. Now, there are a couple popular examples of novelty props. What color will the Gatorade be for the winning head coach when he gets drenched in? That's a popular novelty prop. How long will the national anthem go? That is a very popular novelty prop. Now, those are the two most popular ones. Again, there are a ton of different options. So the easiest way, again, to talk to you about novelty props would be to show you. So let me share my screen again here. The easiest way to to go to them, excuse me. So I am looking at DraftKings. Let me zoom in a little bit here. It's literally listed on most of these sports books as a novelty prop. Now, again, I'm recording this a little bit earlier in the week, so they might not all be available. But types of novelty props that DraftKings is offering. Jersey number. The jersey number over under of the first touchdown score. Coach's challenge. Who will make the first challenge? Will the first challenge be successful? Octopus. This just means will a team score a touchdown and score the 2-point conversion? Will both of those things happen? That is an octopus. Kick to hit post. So will any field goal or extra point hit the crossbar? And then MVP specials. What will be the position of the MVP? Now, obviously, the quarterback is the heavy favorite. That's what DraftKings has to offer. Now, FanDuel, I guess I got to log back in here, also offers different types of novelty props. So we go to BetMGM and we see listed novelty props. Now, this one is, they don't have as many offered yet, but which team will be the first to use a coach's challenge? Which team will call a timeout? These are just the different types of novelty props. So depending on when you're watching this, I can almost assure you that a significantly more amount of novelty props are going to be available. So I definitely recommend checking as the week goes on. One thing that I will do, later in the week, closer to the Super Bowl, I'm going to come out with a video of my favorite novelty props. So definitely make sure to subscribe to the OddsJam YouTube channel to get access to that as soon as it comes out. Turn those notifications on. You'll be notified. We can all bet on novelty props together. So those are the main markets that you can bet on when it comes to the Super Bowl. You have the three main lines: money line, total, point spread. You have player props, you have game props, and then you have novelty props. Now, when it comes to actually profiting on the Super Bowl, I'm going to talk to you about a couple different strategies when it comes to betting on the Super Bowl. number one, you're going to want to find value. No matter what you're doing in sports betting, you want to make sure that there's some sort of value associated with that. And what do I mean by that? Some way in which you are getting an edge. The first way to get an edge would just be to line shop. So I showed you a screenshot earlier. The money line odds, if you remember, on the Chiefs on FanDuel was plus 100. The money line odds on the Eagles was minus 118. Now, a secret about sports betting is that all sports books are going to, not every single sports book are going to have the same odds for what they're pricing a play at. So if you will let me share my screen again, I'll show you. This is a screenshot from the OddsJam completely free line shopping tool. Pulls up the main markets as well as every single alternate market you could ever imagine. Number one, the Eagles money line. We remembered FanDuel had it at minus 118. Well, you could actually, some books have it at best odds at minus 115. We saw that the Chiefs were at plus 100. Well, look, you can get them at plus 106, plus 105 on other sports books. It's the same exact bet, but you're getting more money just by making sure you are maximizing your odds. Similar with line shopping. So the Eagles are minus 1.5 point spreads on most sports books. Looks like there are some places where you can get them at minus 1. So instead of sacrificing that extra half point, you could get them at minus 1. Same thing with the total. We saw FanDuel have it at 48.5. Most books have it at 48.5. Some books have it at 50. So line shopping is just a way to make sure that you are constantly maximizing the best odds that you can get. That's the most important thing, line shopping. The only other thing that's important to remember when it comes to the Super Bowl is that referees are significantly more laxed with what they call, meaning they don't call as tight of a game. So offensive pass interference, defensive pass interference, not called as strictly. Offensive holding, not called as strictly. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're looking at ref statistics and stuff. Just know that there are generally significantly fewer penalties in the Super Bowl. The best example I can give you of that, if you remember the Bengals-Rams Super Bowl last year, the Bengals had a really, really long touchdown pass that would have been called offensive pass interference in literally every other game except for the Super Bowl, because the refs are a lot of times the story. Look at the Chiefs-Bengals game. The refs were the story. That is the last thing that the NFL wants in the Super Bowl, so the refs are really, really less likely to call a penalty. So that's the main difference when it comes to betting strategies specific to the Super Bowl. Other than that, I mentioned line shopping. You're going to want to make sure that you can get an edge when you're betting. But that's kind of the beginner when it comes to betting on the Super Bowl. So if you have any questions, comment and let me know. You can find me on social media at Jedi Modi, as you can see on the screen here, where I will post a lot of sports betting specific stuff, a lot of nonsense stuff. As you can see behind me, some other non-sports interests that I post about. But regardless, hopefully this video made sense. Please comment if you have any questions, or if you just enjoyed it, comment and let me know. Other than that, please remember to subscribe to the OddsJam YouTube channel. As I mentioned, incredibly important to get notified whenever we come out with more videos for the Super Bowl. And that's it. So I appreciate everybody watching, and have a good one.